News Talk Now. The following is a paid program and does not necessarily reflect the views of WSIC.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us here. 4 o'clock hour, 53 minutes and 40 seconds till we get to that 5 o'clock bell, and I appreciate so much you hanging with us during that time as we give attention here on Dollars and Cents to all things financial, economic that are surrounding us. Now, you know, as a previous listener to our show, we're talking on all kinds of things here. We're going to be talking on companies. We're in earnings season, folks. Going to be talking on companies. Some we're going to look at in a positive light. We've got some merger and acquisition activity. I mean, some really interesting combinations that we're going to be talking about here. And some we're going to, again, look at a little more positively. Others maybe not so positively, but in doing so, you remember as a previous listener to Dollars and Cents that nothing that we're talking about here is intended as a specific recommendation for you. Meaning that even though we're giving attention to these things, going to talk strategies, going to talk certainly about what the markets look like right now, going into the latter half of this year and what we expect here through the end of the calendar year, certainly. But in doing so, again, we strongly, strongly recommend that you reach out to your tax advisor, to your financial advisor, or you'd like to reach out to us at North Main Financial Group. Love to hear from you. Love to chat with you about your particular journey. Online, you can find us at northmainfinancial.com. That's north like the direction, main like the street, financial.com. northmainfinancial.com. We have a contact page on there. Leave us an email address, phone number. Let us know the most preferred and desirable ways for us to contact you, again, at northmainfinancial.com. You're also welcome to call us here in the studio. Love to hear from you. If there are particular items that are hitting your radar screen, perhaps that have been a topic of conversation. You know I can't give specific advice over the air. I know you'd rather I do that. I can't do it, all right? Everybody's situation is unique, but happy to take those questions. Certainly if I can field them during the time here on the show today, I will, if we can get them in. And if not, I promise you I'll get to them in next week's show to make sure that we're addressing those things that are relevant and important to you. 844-STUDIO-4, 844-788-3464. That's 844-788-3464 here in the studio. Love to hear from you. Love to chat about your particular space insofar as what you're seeing on your radar screen. But again, not giving any recommendations. You know that. But we'll certainly get to it. And let's get into what's hot here. All right. There's a lot going on here. And you know, you do know. If you've listened to about 10 minutes of any episode of Dollars and Cents, we like to talk food around here. I mean, for justifiable reasons. We're talking about big companies in the food space, but yeah, we just like to eat. You know, I'm going to speak for myself. I just like to eat. I like to talk about food, especially when there's news in the food end of things. Let's talk a big one. And this is big by any stretch when you're talking about merger and acquisition activity, when you're looking at things in my end of the world, certainly with publicly traded companies. And kind of interesting, we have one company involved here, publicly traded, one company that's private. Very, very interesting, but a very large private company. Mars. Mars Candy, probably best known for things like M&Ms and Snickers bars. So good stuff on the candy, but they also are a huge manufacturer and distributor of pet food and all kinds of things. A huge, huge, huge consumer products company. Made an offer and as looking to acquire a group called Kellanova. Now, you may not know Kellanova, ticker symbol, by the way, K as in Kelly. And if you are one who studies the stock markets, you may know where I'm going here, that Kellanova is a spinoff of the old Kellogg's company. And that's why they kept the ticker symbol. Kellogg's used to have that K as in Kelly ticker, and now Kellanova has it. This is the Kellanova end of things in the spinoff was really, let's call it their snacks business, mostly salty snacks. They got some sweet stuff in there too, but a lot of their salt snacks, which again, I think this is pretty much a merger made in heaven. No, I'm not talking about the financials. I'm thinking about a combination of Pringles on the Kellanova side and M&Ms. I mean, producer Bill, that means it's that salty sweet combination. That pretty much does it for me. I could close the door, turn out the lights, and call it a day for something like that. But at any rate,
I'm right there with you.
I mean, it really, truly. I mean, it's great stuff. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, obviously, Kellanova, a well-known company as the spinoff from the old Kellogg's Came out with very good earnings here recently as well, quarterly earnings, but size-wise, we're talking on the order of $36 billion, and all cash. So there's no stock trade. Obviously, with Mars being a private company, that would be implied to be the case. There are otherwise the other ways to finance the deal through debt, etc. They're doing all cash, 35, 36 billion, depending upon where the final shakeout is. About a 10 to 12% premium for Kellanova over where they were trading before the deal was announced. Definitely, there are some arbitrage plays going on right now. You can see folks trying to bet on both sides of the deal, whether it's going to close as advertised or it's going to be adjusted, all those kinds of things. It doesn't look like, by the way, it doesn't look like at this point that there are going to be what are called antitrust concerns. So what that means is sometimes when companies want to get together, when they want to merge or there's a buyout kind of scenario, sometimes they will become too concentrated, meaning the new entity will dominate too much of the market. We see it all the time. We talk about it here on Dollars and Cents when that has happened or when there's a threat of that happening. Doesn't appear like that's going to be the case here. Again, and I know I'm a simple person, but I'm looking at it. Well, you got the sweet stuff on Mars side, you got the salty stuff on Kellanova side. I mean, that's pretty much a merger made in heaven. I'm not even talking about balance sheets and income statements. That sounds pretty good on my end of things. But big deal, $36 billion expected to close in the second quarter of next year. At this point, we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But big deal in the food end of things, and certainly something you want to keep in mind. All right, let's move on. We're going airlines next, and I'm talking airlines because there's been just a tremendous amount. Well, I guess there always is. When you're talking mass transit and you're talking about publicly traded companies who are involved in mass transit, which certainly the case with our legacy airline carriers, it's a big deal because you're affecting lots and lots and lots of people. I'm going to talk about an airline that I've talked about here for the last several weeks here on Dollars and Cents. I'm going to Southwest Airlines, which, by the way, has one of the greatest ticker symbols ever. Seriously. I mean, it literally, you look at the ticker symbol, if you happen to know what it is, Larry, Umbrella, Victor, LUV. I mean, they're literally, their logo includes a heart, and their ticker symbol is LUV. Tough to beat it. Pretty cool stuff on that end of things. But they're going through some challenging times right now. You heard me talk about Southwest announcing really a complete changeover in terms of how their seating goes for their flights. Now, if you're familiar with Southwest, you've flown Southwest, or certainly if you're a frequent flyer there, you know that they don't have first class, they don't have assigned seating, they have their zones where when they announce folks to get on the plane, but they don't have the more traditional first class or economy class or also the rows and numbers, all those kinds of things. Still the same kinds of planes, but just a different style in terms of when folks are getting seated on the plane. And so we talked about that, and there was some pretty, I would say, some pretty challenging kind of pushback, especially from folks who really like flying on Southwest. And now most recently here, a group called Elliott Management, not a publicly traded company. They are what I would call private equity style of investing, but certainly let's call them activist investor. They invest in companies with the intent of getting board seats and really changing over either leadership or certainly the structure of a company to be able to find some additional value. And they're doing that with Southwest Airlines. Elliott Management, big in my end of the world. Maybe not in yours, but certainly my end of things. They're very, very active in that regard. They want a bunch of board seats, and they want to move the president and CEO. It's going to be very interesting to see what that means for Southwest in terms of the company, not only in terms of what it is right now, but as an ongoing concern. So we're going to be watching that. And before that, though, we're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors. Thank you so much for hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents here on WSIC.
Dollars and Cents with your host, certified financial planner Joshua Dobi, continues straight ahead on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
Well, still some great weather for our Thursday. The low humidity hangs around for another day. We'll see plenty of sunshine. Temperatures will be comfortable, climbing into the mid-80s for the afternoon. As we get into Friday and into the weekend, the humidity comes back, as well as that low summertime-like chance for a few pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Weekend, though, is in pretty good shape. Mid-80s, a little sticky, but most of your outdoor plans should remain dry. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
The WSIC app is available now wherever you get your apps, featuring local deals from great local businesses like ISI Denver.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. Langtree Live in Mooresville continues their free Thursday concert series with the Rocky Lynn Band on August 15th. Rocky brings his original and patriotic country music performance to Langtree Lake Norman off exit 31 from I-77. Grab your lawn chairs, set up your spot on the grass, eat and drink at the restaurants and pubs of Langtree, and enjoy the Rocky Lynn concert Thursday at 7 p.m. RevFast in Mooresville presents Hot Rods and Hops on Friday night. This monthly gathering for the car, truck, and motorcycle communities begins at 6 p.m. Food trucks and Hoptown Brewing will be on hand for eats and drinks. Bring your classic or new hot rod out and come make some new friends. RevFast Detail Shop in Mooresville presents Hot Rods and Hops on Friday night. The Cookout Monster Truck Bash is at the dirt track at Charlotte Motor Speedway this Saturday. Sparks will fly as the metal bashing 2,000 horsepower machines return for a night of high-flying action on the planet's most diabolical outdoor course. Gates open at 4 p.m. Bring a Cookout Cup for a free early access to the pit party beginning at 3:30. Pit party includes monster truck rides, inflatable slides, bounce houses, face painting, an autograph session, and souvenirs. Opening ceremonies will begin at 7. Visit CharlotteMotorspeedway.com or the CMS app for information and details. Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville rocks their parking lot this Sunday with a concert by Black Glass. Waves Entertainment brings their stage and sound to Ghostface for a show by Carolina's premier rock and roll cover band. The brewery will be open to serve their full kitchen and draft beer menus. Rock the Lot begins at 5 p.m. Bring your chairs for a good seat at the 6 p.m. Black Glass concert at Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville this Sunday. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
Dollars and Cents continues now. Here's your host, certified financial planner Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us here. Second quarter of today's show, Football Reference. We're into football season, folks. You basically heard me talk about it every single show when we've not been in football season, so you know I'm going to talk about it a lot. Now, I mean, we're in it's that time. I mean, we got preseason games going on at this point. We've got colleges getting back in session, certainly college football teams getting ready. I mean, Producer Bill, it's here. I mean, we've been talking about it. We've had countdowns, big red X's on paper calendars.
I know. I hate to see the summer go. I do love, especially today's weather.
Completely agree.
But yeah, it is nice to look forward to. We're right there.
I'm ready for it. And our Charlotte Panthers, Carolina, I do like to call them Charlotte Panthers. No disrespect to South Carolina. Yeah. I know. No disrespect to South Carolina, but I do like to call them that. But our Carolina Panthers, at this point, still have
we're in good shape.
Exactly the same possibilities for winning the Super Bowl that everybody else does at this point. So, no, they do not count the preseason games, and it does not matter how well or how poorly that you play your preseason games. And so we're still there. So, and we got it's early. It is early. It's still early. I mean, I could just listen to that. I mean, literally for the balance of the show. Anyhow, appreciate so much, folks, you hanging with us here in the second quarter here on Dollars and Cents. Just before we're going to break there, we're talking about Elliott Management, again, private equity. I would call them activist-style investor, getting involved with Southwest Airlines, ticker symbol LUV. Again, one of the coolest ticker symbols out there, in my opinion. But getting involved and wanting to shake things up. And it's going to be interesting to see because Southwest is really, insofar as the legacy airline carriers are concerned. In legacy, I'm looking at Southwest, I'm looking at United, looking at Delta, looking at American. That they just do things a lot differently. I mean, their pricing has historically been under the average of the other legacy carriers, even all the way up to and including how they seat passengers on the plane. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to shake up there. They have a lot of folks who have been there a long time. Going to be interesting to see if they're able to change things. And that, and again, for the folks who fly Southwest a lot, I do not, but it'll be interesting to see what that means for continued passenger interest and whether it's going to be better experience for folks who are actually flying with them. So, all right, let's get to some macro data here. And no, I'm going to try not to bore you to tears, but this is important stuff. Truly, it is. And I get it. I go through the percentages. We talk about what the effects are, but folks, this stuff literally affects our everyday. It truly does. I wouldn't bring it up just for academic reasons. It really does affect us every day. We just printed through an updated year-over-year inflationary figure, dipped below for the first time since 2021, dipped below 3% on an annualized basis, 2.9% on CPI, Consumer Price Index, which is a broad measure of describing the inflationary movements we've had, in this case, in a year-over-year basis, so in the last 12 months. And so that's the lowest that we have seen here in the last, in the last 3 years that we've seen here in that year-over-year figure. Now, the goal or target, as has been highlighted by a whole bunch of previous statements from the Federal Reserve, is 2%. And you're going to hear me talk more about the Federal Reserve. You probably can see my body language here and maybe even a couple of eye rolls if you're watching us on the socials here from me. Obviously, that's subjective, not really in favor of where the Federal Reserve is going right now. But I'm going to talk about that, more commentary and some opinion towards the end of the show. That's a little bit of a teaser. I want you to hang around for that, as we're talking more about the broad markets. But in terms of the inflationary data, that's a good thing. I mean, we talked about where inflation has been here over the last couple of years. We spiked out at 9.1% here 2 summers ago, and then we had a very rapid season, not only time-wise, but in terms of the amount of raising that the Federal Reserve did on interest rates, and definitely has cooled inflation. Now, I would also add to that, and there is a lot that's being written about this, a lot that's being discussed about this right now, that yes, we're seeing inflation come down in places or in pieces, but folks, on a day-to-day basis, I don't know what your experience is, but everything that I'm reading, observing, studying, and experiencing myself says that in terms of our day-to-day experiences, inflation is still very much with us. And I'll look at a couple of real easy touch points here that affect just about everybody. One is housing and the other is insurance. And when I'm looking at insurance, I'm looking at specifically at homeowners and car insurance. Homeowners and car insurance has increased on average over 20% in the last 4 years. And that's on average. Your experience may or may not be the same as that. Housing as well, in terms of the cost of housing. Yes, mortgage rates between 6 and 7% right now, even though we just had a flutter down here about a week or two ago from where we have been, but still between 6 and 7%, long ways from those 3 and 4% mortgages here of a couple of years ago, but also in terms of rents. Rents, on average, up over 20% here in the last 5 years that we've had as well. And you may say, well, there's always a cost of living adjustment that goes along with it. Yes, I don't disagree with that. I'm not even saying that I disagree with the fact necessarily it has gone up. But what is true is that it is significantly more expensive for our day-to-day activities and for our day-to-day needs. And that puts a pinch on things. And we're seeing the effects of it. You don't have to believe me. Look at the data. I mean, right now we have a 40-year high in terms of auto loan deficiencies, meaning that those folks who have not paid their car payment for longer than 90 days. We're at a 40-year high in terms of the number of folks who are doing that. By the way, average car loan payment, just FYI, literally the average car loan payment, over $700 per month. 25% of car loans right now require a payment of over $1,000 per month. Now, I'm going to date myself a little bit here. The first home that I ever bought, I know I'm not young. All right, I get it. It's been a while. But the first home I ever bought, the mortgage payment, and I literally remember to the penny, $414.38. $414, and rates weren't all that low. But that was my mortgage payment. Now we're talking about car loan payments of over $1,000 per month, and that's 1 out of 4. It's not like that's an anomaly or that's unusual. Literally, 1 out of 4 car loans requires a payment of over $1,000 a month. So it is a significantly more expensive space to be able to be there. So we've had a spike up in terms of auto loan payment deficiencies or auto loan deficiencies. We're also seeing spaces where credit cards balances have increased dramatically here over 30% here year over year in terms of the balances which are sitting on credit cards right now. That's huge, folks. I mean, we talk about balance or the interest rates that are charged on credit card balances. We're talking about a very, very expensive kind of space. You're talking about 26, 27% sometimes on the upper end of things. Very, very expensive to hold on to that debt. And if you're having to pay that interest, you're having to pay on that debt, you're obviously not able to spend those dollars on other things. So Very big deal. I try to bring it right to, more of a real world experience for all of us in describing that, because yes, inflation is coming down, but not all the way across the board. And that's very, very real. You heard me bump into mortgages. Got to touch on that. They did flutter down here in the last couple of weeks. So we actually are at the lowest space we've been in a year, which is good because we were up closer there to the 7.5% range on a 30-year fixed. And now we're closer to 6.5% on a 30-year fixed. But it's going to take some time for that actually to be a benefit for us here in the mortgage end of the universe. And the primary reason is this. For all those folks who still have 3 and 4% mortgages, obviously still not in a space where they want to refinance. I mean, even though it's come from, let's say, the 7s to the 6s, if you got a 3 or 4, you're obviously not going to refinance anything unless you have to do that. And then from a purchase standpoint, you're not necessarily going to increase your market dramatically by moving from a 7.5 to a 6.5. There will be some, but it will take time for that to actually have a positive impact in the system. So good that rates are coming down in terms of affordability, but definitely in terms of the positive impacts, we're going to have to wait and see what that actually means. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what the Federal Reserve probably is going to do here over the next month or so, and certainly that's going to play in to what happens with those rates as well. All right, got to go to a big one here. Just came out this afternoon. Just before the time I got on to the radio here, and it's a big one. When you talk about consumer spending, it's hard to find a publicly traded company which probably is more indicative. Actually, there probably is one other one. Amazon's probably one that sits out there as well in terms of consumer spending. But after them, hard to argue against Walmart. WMT, Walter, Mary, Tom, just came out here. I would call it with very positive indications about, well, obviously for their quarterly earnings, they came out very positive. Stock spiked a little bit, up about 4% just before I came on air here. So very, very positive for the company. But again, because of their size and breadth and the number of locations, really an indication about how the consumer is spending. And while they were cautionary, which, good publicly traded companies and their C-suite officers, when they're making their reports, they should do that. So definitely cautious in terms of what they're seeing going forward. But the CFO was very intentional about saying that he doesn't see that there is a significant possibility for recession sitting out there, which I thought was kind of interesting, especially in light of the other challenges that the consumer has right now, that at least from Walmart's standpoint, did not see a space where there was concern about a recession upcoming. So, when we're looking at that, we're looking at Walmart. It's a data point. It's not the only data point. That's why we kind of give you the deluge here so we can stuff as many variables into the algorithm of understanding about where things are. But certainly a significant one. And when you're talking about consumer spending, where folks spend their money, Walmart's right up there, right at the top of the list. Like I said, Amazon's probably the other one, although Amazon is not necessarily in the same kind of distribution business, more of convenience, and obviously they have a number of other kinds of businesses in addition to the more, let's say, well-known end of the delivery aspect of things. But very, very interesting from Walmart that they're coming out with that, and certainly it's going to be interesting to see, especially when we come into the University of Michigan consumer sentiment. I want to touch on this real quick before we go to break again here. University of Michigan puts out a consumer sentiment score that talks about where folks feel comfortable, and lower scores mean folks are not as comfortable. Higher scores mean folks are more comfortable. And it came out here with an 8-month low. And I don't want to take too much time on that other than to mention that it's out there. But I think we're starting to see some of the stressors in terms of where the consumer is right now. Now, again, Walmart came out and they're an anomaly. They certainly said things were looking good, but I wonder how many folks were buying from Walmart in the place of other things, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more here in the third quarter. We're going to take a few seconds to hear from our sponsors first. Thank you so much for hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents. Hang with us again as we come back on WSIC.
Keep it right here. Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi. We'll return shortly on 105.9, 100.7 WSIC.
Well, still some great weather for our Thursday. The low humidity hangs around for another day. We'll see plenty of sunshine. Temperatures will be comfortable, climbing into the mid-80s for the afternoon. As we get into Friday and into the weekend, the humidity comes back, as well as that low summertime-like chance for a few pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Weekend, though, is in pretty good shape. Mid-80s, a little sticky, but most of your outdoor plans should remain dry. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Prioritizing your health is one of the best ways to take care of yourself. From routine visits to the joys of pregnancy to the illnesses that stop you in your tracks, Iredell Health System will be by your side. Learn more at iredellhealth.org.
Hi, this is Bob McIntosh with the McIntosh Law Firm in Davidson. Since 1997, we have been committed to providing our clients with competent, caring, and experienced legal services. Learn more at McIntoshLawFirm.com.
This is Fred Lowry at Lowry Drug. We now have our own brand of full-spectrum hemp extract, also known as CBD oil. I've personally managed this product as it was grown on my farm here in Iredell County. It was then processed and bottled here in Statesville. This is a true herbal extract with all the medicinal components intact. A product you can trust to be authentic. And since there is no wholesaler, it's at a price you can afford. Try it at Lowry Drug on Hartness Road in Statesville.
Hey folks, you know Randy Marion Ford Lincoln in Statesville is known for the prices and selection, but I tell you what, you may not have known the distinction that this store received with Ford and Lincoln this year. We received the President's Award for 2023 for Ford for the 5th year in a row. We also received it for Lincoln for the first year, and I tell you, those awards don't come easily. It all boils down to taking care of the customers and having the vehicles you want in stock for you to buy.
Drum Landscape Supply is the go-to spot for anything you need for your yard. Transform your landscaping. Drum Landscape Supply has trees, flowers, natural stone, custom blended grass seed, mulch, and more. Plus, they deliver. DrumLandscapeSupply.com. The feeling of awe. You know, when you walk through the door on a hot summer day and the cold air hits you. Folks around Charlotte have been feeling that for over 40 years, all thanks to Horn Heating and Air Conditioning. HornHVAC.com.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Just minutes ago, ahead of Wall Street's closing bell, and stocks are on track to make big gains today. We could even see a record closing high or two for the major averages. That's after retail spending rose by 1% in July, the biggest jump in 3 years. It's also a sign that Americans are still spending money. Right now, the Dow and the S&P 500 each up about 1.5%. The NASDAQ up 400 points, 2.33%. Shares of Walmart up 6.5% following a strong earnings report for last quarter as a lot of cash-strapped shoppers went there looking for bargains. It also raised its full-year sales outlook. In a bid to appease antitrust regulators, Kroger, the nation's biggest supermarket owner, says it plans to lower grocery prices by $1 billion. That's if its $25 billion merger with Albertsons gets approved. And next time you buy an $8 coffee at Starbucks, think about this. The coffee giant's incoming CEO will rake in over $100 million in his first year. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
Making your money make sense. Dollars and Cents with CFB Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Second half of today's show. If you're a 9-to-5er, we got 25 minutes and 55 seconds until the big bell rings, and I appreciate it so much. There it is. Well, it's a little early. That's not the bell. That's a bell. The bell still out there about 25 minutes and 35 seconds from right now. And I'm so glad that you're hanging with us here as we're giving attention to all things economic and financial. And we've talked about all kinds of stuff. Gave you a little bit of the Econ 101. Got to do that, looking at where interest rates are right now, inflation is right now. Certainly going to talk about the Federal Reserve a little bit later on in the show, but also we mixed in there a very natural combination of food and airlines. I'm going back to food. This is a big one. I mean, when I say it's big, it's certainly the stock moved. I mean, to have a company of this size move 20% in a day with a CEO change, that's unusual. You see that with small companies sometimes, especially companies that are moved by personalities or very strong, large personalities. You'll see that with smaller companies, very rarely with companies the size that I'm going to describe next, and it's Starbucks. Ticker symbol SAM, Buster, Umbrella, X-Ray, SBUX, not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold. Starbucks, they've been struggling. I don't think that's actually even commentary. I think if you're looking at it from an investment standpoint, if you look at it in terms of certainly the stock price, but then declining sales, declining margins, really had gone through some headaches. And Starbucks certainly a very ubiquitous brand in terms of just prolific. You can't go too far in most urban areas without bumping into 1, 2, or 15 locations. They are. It feels like, anyhow, to me, that they're everywhere, and sometimes that's hard to maintain. McDonald's is probably the poster child for being able to maintain that over a long period of time. Not that they haven't had their slip-ups, but they have done a very good job over a long period of time. Starbucks, I would say, overall has done a very good job of that, especially through their rapid expansion over the last 20 to 30 years. But they'd gone through some real headache. And at least in part, certainly as far as the market was concerned, there was some assumption that the headache was due to some strategic vision at the top of the chain. So they did a change out. And they brought in a very high-profile CEO, paying him a lot of money. Actually, my number, at least in the initial contract, is right around $80 million plus to come in. They brought in Brian Niccol, and you may not know Brian Niccol, but I'll bet you know where he was. The company where he was before Starbucks made a big offer to bring him in, and that's Chipotle. Now, Chipotle, relatively new in terms of the time frame of being a publicly traded company. Chipotle, ticker symbol is Charlie Mary Green, CMG. Not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold CMG, but he really did. Brian Niccol and his team really did a big turnaround there. They had some headaches. They had expansion issues, meaning they probably grew too much too fast. They had quality issues, really hammered them, and even so they had to close some locations over health concerns. They had a whole basket of stuff that was really not very good. And he came in there and right shifted the ship, and certainly CMG has moved on very well since that time. So they brought him over. Starbucks brought him over. This is why I'm bringing it up. The stock increased 20% in a day. Now, again, we're talking a depressed stock price. So we're talking about, actually it had fallen over 20% year to date. So they had definitely had some ground to make up. But 20% in a day for a CEO, that's a lot. That's a lot in my world. But I wish him well, and certainly hope that those things can be right shifted over there at Starbucks. But it's going to be interesting to see the expectations. You get paid that kind of money. It's kind of like a big contract in the NFL. You get paid that kind of money. If you're that left tackle or if you're the quarterback, lots of expectations. So he's going to have to hit the ground running and really produce the numbers to be able to live up to that. So a lot going on. All right, another big company here. Hard to argue that there is any single company more prolific. Certainly there would be other companies that are as prolific, but in terms of the search engine business, meaning when you go online, when you go on the internet and you type in something, it's become not only a noun but a verb kind of space. I'm talking Google, of course. Ticker symbol, depending upon which share class you own. I'm looking at Class C as in cat shares. Ticker symbol is Green Oscar Green, GOOG. Not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold Google. Kind of interesting. Now that Google has been fighting antitrust concerns for quite some time. Antitrust, you remember, is really the let's call it an allegation, certainly at this point. It is law, but it is an allegation at this point that not just to Google, but to other companies in certain industries when it is, and I have to say perceived because there is no scientific metric out there. Meaning it's not like a company that has so much of the market share is considered to be a monopoly. It isn't. There's no precedent to that. So that's why I'm saying it's somewhat arbitrary. But there have been allegations, not only from the Federal Department of Justice, but also from states' attorneys generals and also from the European Union, that Google is too powerful in the search engine business. Well, there was a ruling that came down from a federal court here this past week that actually said just that. And so that has been picked up by the Federal Department of Justice here in the U.S. and a collection of states' attorneys generals who are looking at the possibility of forcing Google to do something different. And I know that's really a very vague and kind of way open-ended. That's really what it is at this point. What was the nomenclature? Pursuing remedies. I didn't know there was a problem, but they're pursuing remedies. Now, I'm not taking away from antitrust concerns. That is something that about which we need to be mindful, certainly if it's stifling competition to the extent that there isn't a possibility for any competition. On the other hand, isn't that kind of what companies want to do? And we call it in a more positive kind of sense. We call it a moat, or a proverbial moat, or the creating a space where it's very challenging for your competitors to be able to overtake you. I think that's one of the objectives of being in business. But boy, you do it too much, again, somewhat arbitrarily decided, then we get slapped on the hands and we get told to do something different. You can obviously tell that I have concern about that because it is arbitrary. If there was a number out there, a percentage, I get it. And you kind of hit to the metric, but it is very arbitrary. It differs industry by industry. And so I still don't know why there are antitrust concerns that are brought up with certain companies and others that are not, in certain industries and others that are not. I mean, we talked airlines a little bit here earlier. I mean, if you look at the airline business, there are basically 3 legacy carriers and a bunch of others that are playing around the edges. Truly. I mean, is that a monopolistic kind of space? Certainly with the amount of mergers that we've had in the airline industry. Again, it seems arbitrary in terms of how we decide that. Anyhow, talking all that about Google because, see, their size, enormous, huge influence over the search end of things. But in addition to the search end of things, and I would argue that this is actually much more powerful, certainly more lucrative insofar as Google is concerned, is their database and their metrics and their collection of data with regards, I'm just going to call it broadly, human behavior. I mean, truly. I mean, if they keep track of everything that we plug into a search bar, don't you think that they may have just billions upon billions of pieces of data that basically can tell us what we're thinking? I mean, if I'm looking up, for example, what are the chances that the Carolina Panthers are going to win the Super Bowl this year? I mean, that they probably have some indication that that's important to me, especially when I maybe revise my search and say, what are the absolute guarantees that the Carolina Panthers are going to win the Super Bowl this year? And then I come up with a blank kind of search result. I'm not saying that can't guarantee it, right? Everybody's got to play the same games, but I like their chances that are out there. Anyhow, so Google has all of that. It's certainly very powerful. I understand the reasons why that they're being, well, let's say that they're having to engage in this for looking at it from an antitrust standpoint. But the fact that it's so arbitrary, the fact that it's so different based upon industry and company and size, very, very challenging, I think, to be able to define that well and to be able to defend it well. And so it'll be interesting to see what if any, changes happen with Google. Certainly, we're going to be watching that kind of thing. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So going away from food and search engines, going to Social Security. We just keep moving here. Cost of living adjustments. If you are a recipient of Social Security, and certainly if you're anticipating receiving Social Security, you want to pay attention to this. Cost of living adjustments, which happen every year. And sometimes, at least up until about 3 years ago, they were quite small over the course of the last decade because they are based roughly, let's say, in partial ways, based upon the Consumer Price Index, actually a portion of the Consumer Price Index. Then we had a couple of big jumps here over the last couple of years because CPI, the portion of the CPI on which Social Security COLAs are adjusted, jumped a lot. Now we're starting to get estimates. So we'll get the actual word from Social Security Administration here in October. Very customary that happens. Folks start making estimates based upon where CPI readings are coming in. It looks like that we're going to be in the 2.5% to 3% range. So let's call it, quote, normal for a cost of living adjustment for Social Security income for Social Security recipients, that's going to be the case here come January. So nothing's real until it's real. But at this point, based upon where CPI readings have been, it looks like that the cost of living adjustment, again, if you're a Social Security recipient, it's going to be in that 2.5% to 3% range as we get into the start of next year. So definitely important to keep in mind. It's important for not only for folks who are receiving Social Security, but obviously if you're going to be receiving it soon, or you have registered recently, those kinds of things are important for you to keep in mind. Now, I'm not talking about any adjustments to any Medicare premiums or anything like that, because in many, many years, you get a bump up in a cost of living adjustment, but you get an increase in your Medicare premiums that are taken from it. And you say, okay, what just happened here? It still feels like the same, because sometimes it is. I know that. So that's a sidebar. But I appreciate, folks, you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents. We're going to hear from our sponsors for a few seconds. Hang with us as we come back on Dollars and Cents.
There's more of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi on the way from 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, still some great weather for our Thursday. The low humidity hangs around for another day. We'll see plenty of sunshine. Temperatures will be comfortable, climbing into the mid-80s for the afternoon. As we get into Friday and into the weekend, the humidity comes back, as well as that low summertime-like chance for a few pop-up showers and thunderstorms. Weekend, though, is in pretty good shape. Mid-80s, a little sticky, but most of your outdoor plans should remain dry. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Here's your WSIC community calendar. Langtree Live in Mooresville continues their free Thursday concert series with the Rocky Lynn Band on August 15th. Rocky brings his original and patriotic country music performance to Langtree Lake Norman off exit 31 from I-77. Grab your lawn chairs, set up your spot on the grass, eat and drink at the restaurants and pubs of Langtree, and enjoy the Rocky Lynn concert Thursday at 7 p.m. RevFast in Mooresville presents Hot Rods and Hops on Friday night. This monthly gathering for the car, truck, and motorcycle communities begins at 6 p.m. Food trucks and Hoptown Brewing will be on hand for eats and drinks. Bring your classic or new hot rod out and come make some new friends. RevFast Detail Shop in Mooresville presents Hot Rods and Hops on Friday night. The Cookout Monster Truck Bash is at the dirt track at Charlotte Motor Speedway this Saturday. Sparks will fly as the metal-bashing 2,000 horsepower machines return for a night of high-flying action on the planet's most diabolical outdoor course. Gates open at 4 p.m. Bring a Cookout Cup for a free early access to the pit party beginning at 3:30. Pit party includes monster truck rides, inflatable slides, bounce houses, face painting, an autograph session, and souvenirs. Opening ceremonies will begin at 7. Visit CharlotteMotorspeedway.com or the CMS app for information and details. Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville rocks their parking lot this Sunday with a concert by Black Glass. Waves Entertainment brings their stage and sound to Ghostface for a show by Carolina's premier rock and roll cover band. The brewery will be open to serve their full kitchen and draft beer menus. Rock the Lot begins at 5 p.m. Bring your chairs for a good seat at the 6 p.m. Black Glass concert at Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville this Sunday. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
Call now to speak with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi at 844-STUDIO-4. It's dollars and cents on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much. Hanging with us, fourth quarter football reference. Appreciate it so much. Hanging with us through today's show. We hit a lot of buttons today, didn't we? I mean, we talked about everything. We got Social Security right before we went to break there. By the way, just for those folks who may not have been listening before we went to break, Social Security cost of living adjustment happens every year coming into Q1 that we're estimating at this point based upon where CPI readings, consumer price index readings have been, that the cost of living adjustment for this coming year is going to be in the 2.5% to 3% range, roughly, at this point. We'll get an official word from Social Security Administration here come October, but at this point, that's what we're seeing, and very likely going to end up in that case if we don't get really unusual CPI jumps or decreases between now and that time. So something important to keep in mind. But we're talking Social Security, we're talking burritos, we're talking coffee, we're talking M&Ms and Pringles, which I still think sounds like a magnificent combination, regardless of the fact that Mars is buying Kellanova. I think the fact that Pringles had in one hand and M&Ms in the other hand, like I said, that may be just a reason to turn out the lights, lock the door, and call it a day. So anyhow, appreciate you hanging with us here. So we're talking on all things economic and financial here on Dollars and Cents. Want to touch on one more here just before, this is really on the what to know end of things. Those kinds of things that may be part of your experience, things you've heard about, maybe you're experiencing them yourself. I want to talk 401ks. Now, when I talk about 401ks, I'm also going to include 403bs, 457s, and the other various parts of the tax code that have to do with retirement plans, and specifically what we call company-sponsored retirement plans. If you work for a company that offers a retirement plan, it is possible, perhaps even likely, that they offer something that is a 401k or like a 401k. If you're a nonprofit business, sometimes it's a 403b. If you're a government-related business, sometimes it's a 457. So there are various parts there, but all essentially doing the same thing with some nuances and differences in terms of more specific rules. But generally speaking, what is a 401k? Why does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter to you. It's possible. You probably have heard about it at some point and maybe even are participating in one, or you did participate in one while you were working. 401k, again, generally speaking, is a plan which is offered by your employer which allows for you to defer a portion of your income, if you choose, into that plan for the purpose of saving for retirement. So let me say it again. 401k, company sponsored, meaning it's offered by your company. You have to be an employee or you have to be affiliated with the company to be able to be a participant in it. And it allows you the opportunity to defer income. So income that would normally come in your paycheck allows you to defer a portion or sometimes a significant portion or even all of your income into the 401k in order to save for retirement. So again, a very big deal. And very often, especially with certain kinds of plans, there is a tax advantage for utilizing the plan, meaning you may not pay income tax on contributions that you make into the plan, or you may pay income tax on contributions you make to the plan, but withdrawals that you would make at some future date may not be taxable to you, or some other kinds of tax advantage for being a participant. There may also be a match provision, meaning some employers offer an incentive to be a participant in their retirement plan by matching your contributions up to certain limits. So there's nothing else out there, folks. If your company offers up a match, a little bit of a sidebar, but I'm going to make this actually a real point. If your company is offering a match, there's nothing else out there that pays you to participate. Make sure if you're involved in a plan where there's a company match, make sure that if you're not taking advantage of it, you start. And if you're not maximizing that match possibility, make sure you get there as quickly as you can. Again, free money pays you to participate in the plan, and all of it is tuned towards saving for your long-term retirement needs. So very, very big deal when it comes to that. So there may be a company match involved. There may also be loan provisions or the opportunities to take a loan from your 401k. And that's different than a hardship withdrawal. So a loan, you take the money out, you don't pay income tax on it. It is indeed a loan from yourself. And then if your plan allows for it, you have the opportunity to pay yourself back through your payroll deductions. So you kind of use yourself as a bank a little bit. Now, there are limitations on that, and there are exceptions to it as well, but there may be some possibilities there. You want to be careful always, though, when you're taking withdrawals from any retirement account before retirement, in recognizing that by doing so, if you don't pay it back, that you're really taking away future money that is set aside for your retirement needs. And the long-term ramifications of that, meaning the long-term ramifications of taking early withdrawals, are significant, especially when you look at them over the course of time. So make sure that you're doing that for the right reasons. Make sure you understand the tax implications on that as well. If you take from a pre-tax 401k account before you're age 59 and a half, you're going to get hit not only with income tax, but you have the possibility, if it's not a hardship withdrawal, to have a 10% excise tax on top of that. So it can be a very expensive dollar that you're withdrawing or you're utilizing for that. Doesn't mean that it's always wrong. I'm saying this so that you're aware. And so it's very, very important to keep in mind, because sometimes folks get surprised by the taxation element on it because there's that additional 10% tax when you take an early withdrawal from a 401k account. So let's just do a real quick recap here on the What to Know segment. 401ks, company-sponsored or company-offered retirement plans, the opportunity to contribute into a retirement plan through your payroll or through your paycheck. Often there are possibilities for a company match, meaning your company literally will add to your account if you contribute to your account up to certain limits. Very important to keep that kind of thing in mind. There may be loan provisions for it as well, but you want to be mindful of the tax element of things. And then the last thing with regards to 401k is you're responsible for how it's invested. And this is a big, big deal. We bump into this all the time with clients at North Main Financial. Because even though we're not managing an active plan often for our clients, especially if they're with an employer with whom we don't do business, we always are helpful in thinking about how to be invested inside of that plan, because very often, especially as they make their way through the years, it becomes one of their largest invested assets. So very, very often we're helping folks out with that. So you need to be mindful about how you're invested. And I said that was the last item. One more item as well. When you leave an employer, you have the opportunity to roll out of the plan or roll over your balance into a personal IRA or into another retirement account. Make sure you're aware of that. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right or wrong thing to do. Just be aware that that kind of possibility is out there, that may be something that you want to consider. Again, everybody's situation is unique. Very, very important that you take a look at it within the frame of your own circumstances. but there are lots of options that come whenever you leave your employer as well with regards to the old balances that are there. So again, 401ks, company-sponsored retirement plans, saving for retirement. Let's pivot. Markets, I know. I leave it right to the bloody end because I want you to hang around and talk about it here. Like, we got to talk about the Federal Reserve. And you heard me say earlier in today's show, and I've said it now for a couple of shows. I'm going to say it again. Again, if you're watching us on the socials, WSIC, or if you're watching us on the WSIC app, which, by the way, if you don't have the WSIC app, go to the Apple Store, go to the Google Store, pick up the WSIC app. So nice. You don't have to worry about radio signal having satellite radio or anything like that. You literally can just tap into the app no matter where you are and always be able to listen to us here. So if you're watching me on the socials right now, you can see kind of the rolled eyes and the slumped shoulders with regards to the Federal Reserve. It looks like, and right now, at least based upon the futures markets, it's a done deal, but obviously things can change. But it looks like the Federal Reserve is going to start cutting rates here with their September meeting. Now, what does that mean? In the immediate, it doesn't mean much of anything. They're probably going to cut 25 basis points or 1/4%. Lots of noise and speculation. They're going to cut a 0.5 percentage point. That would be way overdone, in my opinion. I really hope they don't do that. But that is a possibility that's sitting out there. But I would say there is a high-level possibility that they're going to cut at least probably 25 basis points, 1/4% here in September. So what does that mean? Well, the market's going to love it in the short run. The stock market specifically is going to love it in the short run because, generally speaking, that is indicative of a trend where the Federal Reserve is going, meaning it's not just one cut, but it's going to be subsequent cuts. How much? That's what the market's going to start guessing, and how fast they're going to happen. But in terms of what it means for day-to-day activity for us, for you and for me, what is the impact? Immediately, I would say not much at all. Now, is there going to be an adjustment in terms of auto loan rates? A little bit, very marginally probably. Mortgages, a little bit, maybe. Marginally, though, probably. I mean, you're not going to see, we're not going to go from mortgage rates at 6.5% down to 4.5%. Just not going to happen in that kind of space because of what the Federal Reserve is doing in cutting rates that little. So you're probably not going to see it in tremendous ways up front. But again, as I mentioned, this tends to be an indication of a trend, meaning that the Federal Reserve usually moves in a direction in small steps. So it's rarely one move and then leaving it alone. So I anticipate that if they do indeed cut in September, that there is a possibility that over the course of the next 6 to 12 months that we will have an additional cut or more. That's really the best way I could say it at this point, because a lot of factors involved with that. And certainly when we're looking at it relative to the impact points, we don't want to get carried away and saying, okay, well, the Federal Reserve cut a 1/4 point, so all of these things are going to happen right away. No, we're a $30 trillion economy. It's not going to happen overnight. And so we're going to have to see, and as the Federal Reserve is going to see, what that means in terms of market movements, because like I said, the equity market's probably going to like it. Although you can make an argument that they're starting to price that in already anyhow, because the futures markets are so assured that the rate cutting is going to start here in next month's meeting. But it's going to be something that we're going to watch closely. Because then that brings us into, okay, end of year kind of markets. What do we see? What's different? Well, I'll tell you what, that pullback we had here 2 weeks ago, that's all but gone. Literally, the end as measured by the most popular indices, we've erased that downtick that we had there a couple of weeks ago. And especially in the more aggressive ends of the market, it has completely recovered. Unbelievable. And how fast and how much it has recovered. So definitely not much of a correction. I mean, or it lasted about a day and a half, literally. In terms of that's not a correction, folks. That's a blip, barely a blip on the radar screen. So we're going to be watching. What does that mean for the market? Does that mean that it's going to be very positive coming into the fourth quarter of this year? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how much it takes the movement by the Federal Reserve to provide additional motivation and movement. But nothing's real until it's real. I'm going to be watching along the way. All right, folks, we're rapidly approaching the end of our time together here on this week's version of Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. Talked a lot of things, a lot of food, burritos, coffee, M&Ms, and Pringles. All the stuff that we love most in life. Got a little bit of the airlines there, the markets, and the Federal Reserve, certainly. But I appreciate so much you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents. Tune in next week, Thursdays at 4, here on WSIC.
Serving you better than ever before. WSIC, Statesville, W290DK Mooresville, W264.